Welcome to The Real Deal, where we get real about what it takes to succeed. Whether it's wealth, health, relationships, or finding your purpose, we talk to the masters to uncover the secrets to defying the odds and creating your own rock star legacy. I'm Doug, and after working on multiple Grammy-winning records as an author, transformational speaker, and your personal translightenment coach, I'm committed to your growth and success. And now, here's the real deal. All right, so welcome to today's fantastic episode of The Real Deal On. And one of the fun things I get to do is the introduction, but I get to do it in the fun radio voice that, kind of takes it to another level. So I've printed it out, and prepare yourself for an intro that will be the best one you've had so far today.
Today?
Yes.
Okay. So I can see this and use it in the future.
Should you want to?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Bill Porricelli is a hands-on guy with broad industry experience over the course of his career, which has spanned over 3 decades. He's worked at various record labels early in his career, as well as Premiere P.R.O's, BMI and ASCAP, and the National Association of Music Publishers. He served for over 2 decades as Paul McCartney's longtime Senior Vice President of Licensing, Promotion, and New Product Development for McCartney's MPL Communications, Inc. His iconic movie placements include Unchained Melody from Ghost, Big Girls Don't Cry and Stay, Dirty Dancing, as well as in such classic films as Shawshank Redemption, the Austin Powers film series, Jerry Maguire, and dozens more. After leaving MPL in 2006, Bill was named the EVP for Music Publishing Company of America, where he oversaw day-to-day activities for administration and licensing, as well as securing various publishing rights. In addition, he was co-executive producer for several artist releases through MPCA's legacy artist record label, Hifi Recordings. Bill served as co-managing partner at Airgo Entertainment from 2014 to 2018. A round of applause for Mr. Bill Porricelli. Very nice, very nice.
Nice production.
Best one all day, right?
That's it. We're done.
So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend with us to share really the ups and downs, the ins and outs of your illustrious career. We know each other from music. My peak of my career was when Napster came out, and I was not as focused in staying in the industry as you were. So how did you even get into music? Or even before that, what were you doing before that? Like, how did you...
Yeah. Well, always good talking to you, Doug. Thanks for the invite. Like so many people, music fan growing up, and I started as a songwriter, and that was kind of the ambition, to write songs, and I got into it, and I guess there comes a time in your life when you kind of have to ask the real question: how good am I? Can I really have a career at this? And I guess I realized, and I was truthful to myself, I said, well, I love the business, but I'm not sure that I'm really have the gift, that gift of a gene as a writer, but I certainly appreciate it. But I love music, and even going way back when, I was always curious about, who wrote the song, who produced the song, who engineered the song, all the behind the scenes things, which, now it's harder and harder to do, with streaming. You don't have the back of an album cover to kind of see where it was recorded and who were the essential people that created the record. So the one thing I appreciated songs, love songs to this day in all type of genres. So when I kind of came to the realization is that I didn't think I was going to have a meaningful career as a songwriter. I wanted to get into the business. I mean, and so what I did was way back when, certainly when I was in college, started to go to these meetings, and they had these seminars and these groups and these networking groups. And I learned more about the business. I learned what ASCAP was, what BMI was, the Performing Rights Societies, the Harry Fox Agency, and all of these companies, which I eventually ended up working for. And it's been a long road because I've worked pretty much almost at every facet of the industry over almost a 40-year career. And so it was. So that's how it started. And I mean, back in the late '70s, in Atlantic Records, landing a first job, and first boss was Dave Glue, who very famous record executive, Atlantic Epic Records, over the years. And from there, I've made through the record companies. I worked for different record companies as the administrative assistant, as a gopher. Anything that I could possibly do, I would do. And you learn and you network and you meet people, and so many people that I kind of join the industry with, they've gone on to do some fabulous things. And so that's how it started. I guess that's how anybody's career starts. You got to take those small steps, and then you.
What was your first gig?
What was that?
What was your first gig?
Well, it was Atlantic Records.
As
well, it was just an administrative assistant. It's funny. I had an opportunity that week. I had two job opportunities. There was a page at NBC, because my degree was in media communications. So I had love for that, and I had two offers. It was a job, an entry-level position at Atlantic, and then there was this page at NBC, that's how you got started in the company. Started as a page, you work at different departments, and hopefully you connect. But I went in for the interview, and it just drew me, So I mean, it wasn't a sexy job. It wasn't a fantasy job. It was making Xerox copies, running errands, doing messenger work, everything and anything. But the environment was really cool. You got to meet songwriters and famous people you're seeing on the in the lobby and things like that. So when
was this in Manhattan?
You're 18, yeah. When you're 18, you're 17, 18 years old. That's pretty influential, and it kind of grabbed me. But certainly from there, I had brief stints with ASCAP, with BMI, with the Harry Fox Agency, and then the big one was MPO Communications, which is Paul McCartney's publishing and management company, which I started in the mid '80s, and I expected to be there for about 2 years. It ended up 2 decades, and that certainly exposed me to everything from the world of licensing and Hollywood and movies, and it was a great time. It was a great time. I got to create some great relationships in Hollywood, in all aspects of the music industry, and worked on some great projects, and so many projects, that I've worked on, every day. They're on television at some point. You see Dirty Dancing, or Shawshank Redemption, or Ghost, or Austin Powers, or any of these movies. It's good to know that I had contributed in some way, and but that's pretty much how it got started. And after that, it's all about reinventing yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
nothing is forever in any aspect of life. The only thing constant in life is change, which we all know. And the one thing well, I learned a ton of things, and one thing is that you don't want to be one-dimensional, and that's what I've done as you get older. You don't get smarter, you get wiser. And fortunately, I was able to utilize all of the lessons I've learned, all of the people, and all of the failures. You come out of that. If you can come out of that strong, you pretty much can survive.
Would you say, like, obviously those 2 decades that you were with MPL was during some pretty turbulent times in the music industry, a lot of reinventing in how music was delivered and a lot of shifts. How did you guys navigate that? I mean, did you know where the puck was going?
Well, the thing is, we were a publishing company. I mean, that was our primary function outside of all the artists and his deals with Capitol Records. The great thing, and it's really interesting about publishing, because it's a big business today, and MPL is a publishing company, independent publishing company, which is the prototype for so many of the publishing companies today. It's a very big industry. It's something that investors have gotten involved in a very deep way. But the prototype has always been MPL. It's a combination of copyrights and popular copyrights that you have for administration. Some you own, but they're revenue generators, they're annuities, and if you've got the quality surpassing the physical purchases, and it's something that the only thing constant in life is change, and that's what's happening. It would be interesting to see where it goes from here, but yeah, there was change. But the one thing that is very solid has always been music publishing. Those classic copyrights that you turn on a commercial, you watch a movie, and you instantly recognize that song. They're annuities, they're diamonds, and if you're fortunate enough to be a part of that, or have written one of them, or represent those copyrights, you're in a good place.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that did happen while you were talking, Zoom shut down and came back on, and so I don't know how much we went through.
I said great things there.
I know. I'm sure you did. It's incredible, like where it stopped. So
what do you need me to back up if you have a question?
So you started to share about the fact that investors were getting into it, and then when it went blank for a bit, I just shared a little bit that it reminded me a little bit of like mortgages as like an asset. So you could buy, like banks buy mortgages, the notes. Investors are buying publishing because they are creating income, and then what you do is you find new ways to monetize it.
Right, they're annuities, particularly if you've got those classic songs, because
you went blanking.
There's a movie with an instantly recognizable song. Those are what the advertisers and the sponsors respond to. That's what the consumer responds to. So those classic songs are incredibly profitable for the writers, for the publishers, and it's a business that is there are a number of companies right now that are backed by major private equity, hedge fund, high wealth individuals that recognize that the copyright business is a huge business, and if you've got the right copyright assets, you can have a very successful business.
So one of the things, and this was always like a little bit of I think for some, not a gray area, but of area of confusion to some extent, is there are the masters, the recording rights and then
Right.
there's the publishing.
Right.
And I know that Russ and I actually, we got hired a few times to recreate songs because they didn't want to pay the mechanicals, right?
Sure.
What impact does that have? And as a strategy, does that,
Right.
from the artist standpoint, does that have any impact?
Well, of course, I mean, you see it today with Taylor Swift, who has issues with her former management, and she's re-recording her songs. I know a number of artists over the years who don't have any claim to the master recordings. Now, keep in mind, for those people who don't know, when you hear a song, like for instance, if you hear a Beatles song, so to speak, you hear the recording, which is a Beatles recording, which is owned by, in this case, Capitol Records. Okay, and then there's the song, the publishing, the actual song itself, which was written by Lennon McCartney. So the publisher has the right to re-record the song, and a popular song can be recorded thousands and thousands of times, but there's only one original master recording. So what happens for a songwriter, certainly it's in their best interest to get as many people to record the song as possible. So re-records, are essential. Advertising agencies use them, sound-alikes. And that the one thing is, that's where the publisher makes their money. And like I said, the master recording is owned by the recording company. Sometimes the artist owns it, but that's only one aspect. It's one recording, as opposed to owning the copyright, where you can do many, many different things. You can't do anything to a master recording, but you can re-record over and over and over.
Which is what happened in the sampling days. At first, people were using the actual record, and then
Right.
they got very expensive. It's like, oh, let's just re-record it, make it sound exactly the same, and have the same effect.
Right, and it's more cost effective.
Right.
It's more cost effective because you do have to pay the royalty, to the master owners. I've been in the middle of a lot of those. I've worked on some really interesting things. As a matter of fact, I worked on the movie Austin Power Goldmember, and the song "Hard Knock Life," which was written by Martin Charnin, the lyric for the show Annie.
Yep.
And Jay-Z did his version of "Hard Knock Life," and it was in the movie in Goldmember in the prison scene. So there's so many things you can do, and re-records are fabulous. And when you can have a contemporary artist do their slant on an old standard or an older tune, it's great. It's great for the business. It's great for everyone, to get exposure to these songs.
So when my first, like my major music experience was with Rick Wake and Richie Cannata and that whole thing. And Rick's model was create the song for the artist in mind, do it complete, make the record, and then present it to the artist to say, look,
Sure.
You'd sound great on this. So we'd hire a singer that sounded like Celine Dion. When we presented the song to Celine, she already could hear her voice, right? And the A&R guys. In the publishing world, where you're sharing kind of some of the ways to, get songs in films and all of that, do you also, were you part of, do you reach out to somebody and say, you know what, we would love to have, and using Goldmember, I don't think that was the case. I think Jay-Z had already done that. But
right.
Do you go, it would be great if we could put this song in done by that person, and then you orchestrate a re-record? Is that part of the gig that you would do?
Sure, every aspect of it, when you're representing the copyrights, as publishers do, every possible scenario comes up. I mean, in many cases, you'll get a request from the music supervisor on the film. We want this. We're looking to use Tony Bennett's "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," or whatever it is, or "Luck Be a Lady" by Frank Sinatra. In some cases, they know exactly what they want. I worked with Nora Ephron, who was, Sleepless in Seattle and so many incredible movies. But I did Sleepless in Seattle, and we had In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. and she utilized the Carly Simon version of In the West. Once been recorded by many different people, but in many instances, and I've worked with Cameron Crowe on Jerry Maguire, and he had Almost Famous. He won the Academy Award, and Vanilla Sky, which McCartney got nominated for an Academy Award. Some directors have a vision. They want this recording, and that's it, regardless of the cost, because that's always an issue. I hate to say that. And many times, the first budget that's cut in a film is the music budget. So then there's a compromise. Okay, well, we can't afford Sinatra's My Way. Can we get somebody to re-record it that sounds like Sinatra?
And that would even be cheaper to send someone into the studio, actually reproduce it, everything, than to pay for the original.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's more cost effective, but again, there's certain directors, they're specific. Penny Marshall was like that. Cameron Crowe's like that. Nora Ephron was like that. This is what we want. And but there are times we'll suggest songs. A number of cases. Look, people ask me what was my favorite placement, where I feel that I contributed quite a bit. I'll never forget. There was back in 92, 93. It was Arlene Fishback, who was a music supervisor and a music consultant on many films. And she comes into our office and she says, okay, I've got a couple of movies here. I've got this one movie, and we need a couple of pieces of music, but this one, she goes, I've got, it's the opening scene of the movie. Main character, Andy Dufresne, is sitting in his car. His wife's in a motel having an affair. He's sitting outside in the car. It's raining. What song is playing on the radio? She said to me. And I said, okay, well, what's the time frame? She goes, mid to late 40s. And I immediately kind of had a song in mind. We represented the Jack Lawrence portion of If I Didn't Care by the Ink Spots. And she went back to the director, Frank Darabont, and that literally that night she goes, perfect. If I Didn't Care is going to be the opening. It ended up being the opening credits of Shawshank Redemption, which was a cool thing, which I was credited on the soundtrack, but not in the film, but that's a whole political thing.
Yes. Politics actually brings me to, well, not that kind of politics. We don't have to go there necessarily, but what has happened with streaming, and that I guess is political within like the confines of the industry. How do you see that all unfolding any further? Because I know there are some people who are not as thrilled. A lot of artists are not as thrilled with the whole streaming concept. What has your experience been?
You mean streaming audio? Just streaming? Well, look, I think what's happened, we've come a long, long way. I've been in the business a long time in terms of regulations.
Yeah.
And there are people in Washington, and there are great industry committees with some fabulous people who I've known for years, and they're getting the laws are getting more and more stricter to protect the creators.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, these users and the producers, it will only help them going forward, that all these various sources of revenue streams. So I think in the long run, it's, once these things all become more regulated, I think it's great. It's great because it's just more money for the creators.
Have publishing organizations suffered similarly because of that, in the same way that studios and record companies to some extent have? Because you can put your own music out, you can make it, you don't need a studio, you can get it onto YouTube and monetize through ads or any of that kind of stuff. What impact has that had on publishers?
Well, publishers are pretty much protected, because if that song is recognizable and that song is published and it's published, it's protected, it's copywritten, then it's very hard to not not be accountable. If you're utilizing that work, that song's going to be recognized. That again, if you need to be, you need to have a publisher designate it domestically, internationally. It's important, because there's sub-publishers around the world that protect the writer's interests.
So the publisher, a person who's independent, still needs the support of a publishing organization. They can't really just copyright it themselves, and then.
The problem with that is it's a lot of work. Right. It's a lot of, and I know friends and people, and I know writers who decided that they want to control it, administer it themselves. They cut deals overseas with publishing companies that collect in different territories. But if you're doing it yourself, it's a lot of work, and things fall through the cracks. That's a good thing about having a publisher, because their job is to make sure that everything is accounted for. Now, the problem I know with some writers, very famous songwriters, they have copyrights in some of these big companies. When you've got 4 million plus copyrights, it's very, very difficult with the not big staffs anymore. Everyone's cutting down. Opportunities get lost, promotion gets lost. And so if you're a songwriter, do as much as you can to help promote. Don't depend upon somebody else, marketing and promoting your rights. It's all about networking, and know who the music supervisors are, because man, they've got a number of scripts for the next, couple of months. And everything's negotiable. I mean, you see you can see a song and hear a song in a movie or a commercial, and it fits great. But you know what? 5,000 other songs would have fit just as good. And what's the difference? Well, maybe that publisher or that writer had a relationship with the music supervisor or the ad executive. And again, in many cases, it comes from within. They already have in mind what they want, and it's written into the script. And so it happens many different ways.
Well, it just made me think of, not to say I was disenchanted, because when I got into music, into business full time, I was in my early 20s, and I just started to see how the hot dog was made. And what's really interesting, like you just shared, it's on all levels, is just because you have a publisher, or just because you have a record deal, or just because you have these certain contracts, does not mean you get to sit back and someone else is going to do all the work for you. You still, as a band, have to go out and promote yourself. You still, as a songwriter, have to go out and build the relationships and get it in there. I remember when I had a record deal, and same thing happened. And then I had my first publishing deal on a book. And I was like, oh, great. They're going to, it's with Simon & Schuster. They're going to, totally, hook it up. And no, it's still up to me to be calling up the bookstores and be like, I want to, and it's so interesting where everywhere in life, the people who succeed take personal responsibility, and they're willing to do the extra mile, as it were. That it's not the end zone. The end game isn't get signed. The end game is do something with getting signed. Absolutely. There's no question about it. Look, record companies, in the day, we can think about, when there were, 6, 7 majors that exist. And it was like 2. But a band would get signed, and they would have a 3 to 4 record deal. Right now, the music industry, the record industry, is kind of like the movie industry, where the success or failure seems to fall on the first weekend of a movie. You pretty much know, by Sunday night, after you're reviewing those box office receipts, whether or not you have a successful movie. Same with a record. They don't have any patience anymore. If it doesn't happen quickly, boom, they're on to the next one. Years ago, when it was, Ahmet Ertegun and Mo Austin and Lenny Waronker and all they gave, they gave an artist that they believed in a shot. Now it's very quick, and it has to happen quickly. Yeah, and it's so interesting how that impacts how records or how anything is
Right.
done. And sadly, I think what happens as well is that it impacts the time, and that may be why the quality for some experiences has gone down, because they're already knowing they're not going to be putting tons of effort into getting it to the next level, so they put about the same amount of energy into the creation as they do into the promotion, which is going to be short-lived. So there's less attention paid to the quality on
Yeah.
some level.
Right, and that's why I always say, nowadays, where the record companies really went to bat for you in the day, now pretty much you got to pretty much take it down the field yourself. I mean, right down to the 10-yard line, and if they see all the work you've done, they see that you've got followers, they see that all of this is happening, then the record company uses their muscle pretty much for the last 10 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But the days of them taking an artist, from one side of the field and bringing them all, no, it doesn't really happen that way realistically. And,
And I think
you got to do it for yourself.
that's been a slow, well, not slow, but I even witnessed that in, my day. I started in the 90s. That was when my, experience like really started to get, full on. And I noticed that too, that the bands that I knew bands that were signed bands, they all had day jobs, and that they'd go out on tour, but they're like, we're not making money on that. And then I remember the shift. My manager was like Brian Doyle and those guys, and they were managing Hall & Oates. And they were like, Hall & Oates made their first $1 million each on the lowest selling record that they put out themselves. They never made that kind of money when they haven't selling those millions and millions of records. They made nothing compared to when they did it themselves.
Amazing. Yeah.
So it was like interesting and I was watching that and I'm like, man, you don't need a record company. As a matter of fact, you'd probably be better off doing it yourself. Just like you said, get to that 10-yard line and then they'll help you scale.
Well, here's the great thing about technology and the industry today. It's never been more true. Where, years ago, maybe, 10, 15 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, where if you were an artist and you were going to have success, you needed to be signed by a major. Not anymore. There are so many incredible independent labels that exist. And it's always going to come down to the artist and the song, I mean, it always comes down to that. Anyone thinks, I mean, look, YouTube and the digital platforms are great tools. But there are some great stories where somebody was discovered that way, but they're few and far between.
Yeah.
It's a great tool, but independent and learning as much as you can about publishing, the record industry, marketing, promotion, touring, comes down to the song. If you've got those great songs, they always come shining through. They really do. But networking is important. Having a relationship with the performing rights societies, all that. It's networking, but do as much of it. Don't depend upon anybody to do anything for you.
Yeah, I mean, your network is your net worth on every level. So how, without naming names, right? But you've been around, and this is something that always kind of bothered me in the industry. There would always be a few artists or bands that I didn't get how they were able to be so successful. Like, have there been any songs where you like passed on and you were like, oh, no way, this isn't going to work. And then you're like, holy crap, that blew up. Or you can name names if you want. I
had a few instances. I'm not going to name names of why they didn't happen. I can name a couple of projects that I had, which were unknown artists at the time, and I was vetoed on it, and I wasn't able to bring them in. But One of them was a little record you may have heard of, Jagged Little Pill, an artist named Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity for that early on. You know, there were a number of artists that you know, again, my career has not really been in the artist business.
Right.
You know, I've been in the copyright business, in the song business, in the licensing business, pretty much. So there were a couple of opportunities for me to sign people, but the situation I was in at the moment, they were not into that type of industry. They were not into that type of business. So, you know, that gets frustrating, and then you see it have success down the road. You know, I've seen it happen. I know it's happened to friends of mine who've like.
Have you seen it happen conversely, where you were like, no, I don't see it happening, and then it did?
Well, you know what? Yeah, there was. As a matter of fact, if I have the record here, I may have it in the room. I have some of my memorabilia. Yeah, well, it gets back to that. There were a couple of records that I thought were okay, and one in particular I thought was going to, and I thought the record was good, and I thought they could sell, and I thought I was being very generous. I thought it could be a gold record. I thought it could sell possibly 500,000 records, which is not an insult, you know. It ended up being Jagged Little Pill, and it sold. And I remember, you know, getting a CD saying, a signed CD saying, 500,000. Thanks for the support. But it was, you know, I mean, you never know, you know. I mean, what catches fire, you know.
Well, yeah, it's exactly. I mean, I remember, you know Shane Keister?
I love Shane Keister. He's in Nashville.
Yeah, Shane is amazing.
One of the great musicians, and in Nashville, he's kind of like, if there's a award show,
it's him.
The CMAs or anything, the musical director is Shane Keister. Unbelievable. And by the way, I don't think people realize, like, you know, those big hits for Five for Fighting, you know, all the keyboards on that. That was Shane. Yngling Dan and John Ford Coley, big keyboard. That's Shane. He also, if I'm not mistaken, he played with Elvis
when he was like 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like a virtuoso. No, super talented guy, hilarious, great friend. He shared the story. He's like, he played on all the big records of the country records of the 70s and stuff. And he goes, man, he goes, you know, I got to be honest. He goes, sometimes I don't trust my gut. He said, I remember I'm sitting there with Kenny Rogers, finish the record, and I'm sitting there to Paul Lime, the drummer. He goes, I don't get it. The song I just don't get. Like, this is gonna be. I feel bad. This is gonna be a bad record. And Paul was like, no, dude, this is gonna be a hit. And he's like, nah, it's this song. I know. I don't see it happening. It was Lucille.
Okay.
So it's just so funny where, like, we all have these perceptions and we never know, like sometimes we hear a song and we just go, oh my gosh. Like, like I remember before I knew, the today is going to be a day, what's the brothers, Liam and I don't believe anybody feels the way I do right you now. So that song, before it came, I was so involved in like making records at that time that like I didn't get all the hits and all that. We were so focused on the pop with Celine and all that. So this kid comes in and he starts playing like he's doing like an audition for a college thing or something. He's like one of those, you know, like come in for an hour and record something acoustically. And he comes in and he starts playing the song. I'm like, this song's amazing. Like, this guy's got to get a deal. Like, he's got to come in. And then I like brought someone in to play him a song. Like, check out this kid, you know, this kid's song. And they were like, dude, it's a cover. Like, this is already a huge hit. I'm like, awkward. But like, great songs are great songs. But then other times we just like, I don't know. It's sometimes I don't get it. sometimes.
Yeah, look, I'm a lover of songs, and every genre, and gosh, I think back in the like Tom Bell and Linda Creed, the Philadelphia sound, and a lot of the great R&B artists, and my I spanned across the board, right from the Sinatra standards, to obviously no one on earth doesn't love Motown, and everywhere in between. So I have an appreciation for all these types of genres, and certain songs, I guess, that you hear and you say, I don't get it. I don't get many of those, because I mean, usually, hindsight, I mean, I've heard demos before, and I'll be honest with you, the one demo that I heard back in the mid '80s, were these records at Virgin, and they were Paula Abdul, and I loved them. I thought they were great pop songs. It ended up being the Forever Your Girl album, and she had about 4 or 5 hits off of that record.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't start out good, but I remember hearing that and saying, "My God, I think they've got a hit record here." And I remember hearing, because I spent a lot of time over at Media Sound Recording Studios when it was on 57th Street, and so many great records were developed in there. It was the first time I heard Whitney Houston. I couldn't freaking believe her voice.
Nope.
Best, most unbelievable, purest, most solid, incredible voice I think I've ever heard in person. When I've heard her perform. So I've been very fortunate, but there's not many things I say, I guess that's I mean, there are certain things I'm maybe not, like I said, I have an appreciation for all music, maybe punk music. I can't follow that good, maybe heavy metal. I can't really, I mean, I appreciate the creators. I appreciate them. But I like melody. Always loved lyrics. I've always loved songs.
When you were a writer, what kind of music? What type of songs were you doing?
I thought I was a lyricist, and I loved Hal David. And I always loved Backrack David. So I wrote lyrics. I was a lyric writer, and it was.
You still write poetry or lyrics or anything?
Oh yeah. I'm pretty good with writing. I've written some lyrics. I mean, we've recorded some of the songs over the years. And again, I mean, I've had a couple of covers, but nothing to brag about. The one thing I learned in business and writers and success, that the one thing about success, the hardest thing about being successful is that you've got to continue to be successful. It is the hardest thing about being successful. You've got to do it over and over, and every day is an audition.
Do you think that that's part of the reason that some people give up, is because they know that inherently, that if they get to a certain level, the work that it's going to take to stay at that level is what scares some people?
Well, maybe. It's hard to get into other people's heads because everybody is really different. I mean, I don't think there's any two people on the planet Earth that think or act or, have the same.
No, but there are certain consistencies, right, that we want to look for, like to model the successful people. Is the person who is able to maintain that level of success has conditioned themselves to appreciate or enjoy that level of effort.
Well, look, the way, if I'm answering this correctly, successful people, whether it's in music, it's creative, whether it's business, I honestly think you're born with two genes. The people that are ultra successful, they're born with a creative gene and they're born with a desire gene. It's that work gene. I mean, there's some people out there that are lazy. They want it to happen. Like I said, everyone's different. Everyone's motivated by something different. But the desire gene, to me, is more impressive even than the creative gene. You know, I know some people who have the most desire. The work ethic is like nothing I've ever seen, but they just don't have it. And I've seen it with artists. That breaks my heart when you see an artist who works like nothing you've ever seen, but at the end of the day, it's just not there creatively. And then what pisses me off is the incredibly talented people that are lazy and they don't take advantage of the gift, you know. But again, that's, you know.
So of all the people that you've worked with, all the super successful and all of that, is there a thread of consistency, something, an attribute that you notice beyond the desire and the creativity? Is there something that, whether it's a mindset that you notice, is it a level of confidence? Is it a level of like that it factor?
I hear what you're saying, because like I'm in awe of anyone that has consistent success. Like I said, the hardest thing about being successful is that you've got to continue to be successful over and over and over and over again. And there are some people out there, and believe it or not, I even had this conversation once with Lionel Richie. We have a really close mutual friend, and man, this guy is just a hit machine, and he just so unbelievably consistent. You know, some people are just born with genius. And I read this book, great book, and I don't remember what this book was, but it was about genius, where and it talked about some of the great geniuses in the literary world and the business world and the entertainment world. Pretty much most genius has a shelf life. You know, there's an expiration date where all of their great works, you know, and you can point to a lot of people where it was a period of time, you know. I mean, some people that were prolific in the 60s or 70s or 80s, they ain't doing it today. You know, you ever think about that? You know, the guys that just had hit after hit after hit, and they're writing and still producing work today, and it's just not resonating, you know?
I wonder if part of that, it makes me think of, do you remember Napoleon Dynamite?
Oh, the movie.
Yeah. So you remember Uncle Ricky?
Yeah, of course.
Always reliving his high school day.
Yeah, oh.
Right, throwing the ball, right? Like, I wonder if for some, you know, that they're not progressing, they're not transforming, that they're still writing, they still are, they never adapted and grew as a artist or a creator or what have you. And they're still trying to write the same hit, same formula that got that hit that may be time tested, but they didn't adjust.
Right. Now you're getting into an interesting space of reinventing.
Right.
You know, reinventing yourself. You know, reinventing yourself, which is really interesting. I think I could talk about that for hours about reinventing. You know, like I said, you know, when you get older, you get wiser. You don't necessarily get smarter, but you take all of these circumstances and situations and people you've met, and if you're wise enough, you use those, you know, to navigate the landmines as you go forward. You know, but the reinventing process, because I think you can't be one dimensional. You know, I think that's why it's important to appreciate all the music that's out there. You know, I mean, kind of, you know, I mean, there's good and bad music in every genre. You know, I think we all know that, you know, but the reinventing part of it, you know, for writers, and again, and particularly if you had success before, right? Where are you? Okay. Look, I'm a great example of that, because I remember there was a time for me when I had a great run, and then I wasn't sure what the next chapter was. And you stop for a minute and say, holy crap, what next? I was given the best advice, okay, by a guy, an old friend of mine, you may know him, by the name of Billy Terrell. I'll never forget. And 4 words: he said, stay in the game, you know, and it doesn't matter if there's money attached to it, prestige attached to it. Take a project, become an assistant of an assistant of an assistant. If you can become an associate producer, an executive producer on a project, but if it's a quality project, stay in the game, because ultimately, you know, that's going to lead to this. It's going to lead to that, to this person and that. And I did. I took some projects. I took some projects at a time where I wasn't sure if it was over, and I took on some projects, and there was no money attached to it, but there was a credit. You know, there was a credit. There was there was visibility. You know, and it allowed me to keep the name out there. You know, again, this is being completely transparent. You know, some people don't want to admit the fact that, you know what, not everything runs smooth. Not everything is great. You know, you're going to have shit periods. And I've been very fortunate because I've had a career, I've had a reputation where I've always been pretty candid to people, and I've always had opportunities to work on things. And still to this day with a new company that we're starting at the end of the year. But the whole reinvention process, you know, again, it's very hard. I think if you're a star or somebody who's had enormous success, to come out, I mean, you know, to come out and do a duet with a current successful group, you know, and get on stage with somebody, and, you know, because I've had the conversation with those people. They say, well, how can I, looks like I'm trying to ride on their coattails, you know, I can't do that, you know.
You think that's what Steven Tyler thought when they did with Run DMC, or like?
Well, it could have been. I mean, I don't know Steven, but you know, that was a great collaboration, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that amazing collaboration. But some people shy away from the collaborations.
And that's crazy, because if I look at like the super groups of the 60s, right? Blind Faith and like all these incredible groups that got together. And then I saw that's how a lot of the rap artists were able to blow up, because they collaborated and they would do the almost their same version of super groups. And like, to me, that's a no-brainer. I think that that is ultimately, isn't that why we're on this planet, is to collaborate and work together, and then to do
the way it should be.
That's the way
and that's the way it should be. And look, we see it in the freaking streets today, unfortunately. You know, I mean, that you know, there's got to be a come together Jesus moment where at some point, you know, we all have to do it professionally and personally.
I like to think then that, you know, because I've had to reinvent myself multiple times as well, is that it is
anyone who says that they don't is bullshit.
Or they don't recognize it as a reinvention. They can't appreciate it. But it's not comfortable. It's painful sometimes because you're, in some sense, and this is, you know, where we're seeing it in all aspects of life, but you're almost letting go of a part of who you are. It's like letting go of part of your identity. And this is a really challenging experience for a person, because the strongest need in our psychology is to be congruent with the way we identify ourselves. And then if we like take away some of that identity, then we're left with, well, who am I?
Right.
Instead of going, who do I want to be?
Sure. And and it's certainly, you know, for people that have been more established, you know, when you're young, you know, you're gonna make mistakes. You know, you're supposed to make mistakes. You know, I have two young boys in their early 20s. You know, part of me wants to protect them from the landmines, and part of me saying, no, you got to get your feet burned a bit, kid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, that will only make you grow. You know, it'll make you stronger. You know, you know, it's again, individuals, they're all motivated by different reasons and circumstances, and but the reinventing, and again, I've done it a couple of times, but I've stayed it's within the entertainment industry,
right?
have not, but I've been able to utilize all of the things that I was incredibly successful with, and they always apply. The language always applies,
Right.
whether you're a good marketing person, whether you were a marketing person for dish towels or shoes, you can take those basic principles and do it in any industry.
100%.
And that's the one thing, maybe some of the terminology changes, but it's all the same. It
There's only
really
so
is.
many ways you could draw a square.
Absolutely.
So and also knowing the driver, I remember, and Dee was actually the very first guest I ever had on this. Like I started this is my third time doing this show. Like it comes out, I do it in like kind of spurts.
Right.
Dee did originally, and we were friends. I co-produced the second Widowmaker record, and we became close. And I remember talking to him back then. I don't know if I covered it with him on the show, but he shared with me part of his reinvention back in the day. He's like, I was sitting in my pool. I don't have a care in the world. I've, sold, millions of records and all that. And I'm trying to write a song, and I realize that I'm not pissed off about anything anymore.
Right. Hey.
And
Yeah.
he goes, for him, and what he had to reinvent was his purpose, his reason for writing and all of that. And then he was able to reframe it all. And then he ended up getting a song on Celine Dion and Rosie O'Donnell's Christmas record and all of that later on, which has nothing to do with rock. So
and now you hear Dee doing narration
Yeah.
on shows like Access TV, and I'm watching the TV and I'm saying, oh my God, that sounds like Dee. That's Dee Snider. And then you see the credits roll, and and it's Dee. So talk about reinventing, and look, I actually happen to have some few really good friends. One, I will not mention his name, hugely successful in the rap business for a long time, but he had that same problem. He was a writer and a producer and had a lot of success. He's living really well right now. And he told me that those early songs that I wrote, I don't have the same perspective. And because I'm actually living here in actually he moved to Beverly Glen, I think it is, really nice up there. And he says, yeah, it changed his perspective on it. So he's reinvented himself, and now he's making movies, and he's doing really well.
And whenever, like, as personal development and working with people, I work a lot with identity, and to kind of as an analogy similar to that is when I look at guys like, you could be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? Reinvented himself from wrestler to the actor that he is. But then a guy like Ice Cube, right? Who was, like pretty hardcore, and then he's doing Disney movies.
Right. No, look, he's a great story.
It's amazing
yeah.
People get locked into sometimes an identity that the power of that identity got them somewhere. And sadly, sometimes the power of that identity keeps them stuck.
No question about it. And sometimes, fate arrives and it finds you, personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
It finds you, a cause, a person, or a circumstance. Look, I happen to be getting involved with a new digital network called the Y Network, being launched at the end of this year. And 4 of the most incredible, successful media people from radio, from TV merchandising, and we got together and we have different perspectives of our careers in media, and collectively we had this incredible vision, and we've started, and actually we're going to be launching. It's, we felt that there's a lot of subscription fatigue for consumers. Everywhere you turn, you got to spend $9.99 for a Netflix or a Hulu event. So we've got this will be a free platform, but it's going to have, you'll be able to watch it where, when, and how you want to watch it on your devices. But it's going to be some original content, recognizable content. And again, I never thought I would be in that space, but I'm utilizing the principles that I did from my marketing, product development, licensing area. And, you know, if you've had any success, if you've had a job in your life, you're going to be able to utilize that somewhere else. It transfers, it does transfer. And,
Well, and what's so interesting, and as you're sharing it with the transformation, the word that just came up for me is humility.
Yeah.
To be able to go, okay, I've done some great stuff. I could take those skills with me, and
Right.
I'm humble enough to know that there are other opportunities, there are other people that I could do business with. So you talked about those. If you didn't have a level of humility, you wouldn't be able to work with those 4 other moguls to go, like, hey, let's all add to this picture.
And we're all pretty much kind of alpha people, but it's a good thing. And we're all competitive, but in a really, really good way. It's not a negative competition. And, they make me want to be better, and I like to do something makes them better. And I think, it's teamwork, man. I mean, that's the way it should be in life in general, and, you hope that one day I get to live long enough to see it, but like this collaboration is great because we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we're able to cover each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's why I feel really comfortable. If I'm not really familiar with it, I know one of my partners has it covered.
Right.
And if we don't, we're all one phone call away from getting the answer. That's a great thing about, having experiences and Rolodexes and a history.
Awesome. Well, how can we support, like, I know you're going to launch at the end of the year. Is there, and depending on when people are listening to it, if it's already out, in the future, Y Network's probably going to be blow out.
No, it's going to be called the Y Networks, and that's going to be coming out. You'll see more about it as we get closer to the end of the year. But, we've struck deals with Paramount and 20th Century Fox for reruns and feature films that everyone knows. And we're working with some really good companies at creating original content. So it's going to start with 3 or 4 channels, but we're going to have everything from comedy to TV merchandising, selling, home shopping, selling.
Well, as you know, I'm throwing my hat in the ring for the personal development channel.
Well, we want to have every aspect. And the great thing about it, it's a free platform, and like I said, people have subscription fatigue, but this is going to be certainly run via marketing and advertising. That's what's going to generate the revenue to keep us going. And, the only thing constant in life is change, and you got to keep going with it, and you got to check your ego at the door and, just move forward. And that's what you have to do in anything.
Well, if looking back at your career, your experiences, and you shared a little bit, with your children, is there any advice that you would give a younger self, knowing what you know now, the experiences that you have, any lessons that you would have potentially have avoided learning by, experience had you been given certain advice?
That's a good question. See, I don't do any interviews, so some people that are constantly doing interviews, they have prepared answers,
right?
Because they've said it many, many, many times. Look, when you're young, you're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to make mistakes personally and professionally, but you hope to grow from them. The one thing is I like experienced people. I see that as an asset, although companies today see it as a liability. Experience and longevity should be an asset, not a liability. And some companies, they'll get rid of somebody with experience because they make too much money, and we'll bring 4 young people in. That's
right.
I guess that happened when I was young and we were young, and I guess that's the way the transformation takes place. I don't think I'd really do, the great line in my way. Regrets, I had a few, but then again, too too few to mention.
Mm.
But and you did it my way. There was a great line, and I love the Rocky movies, and I'll tell you why. Because when the first Rocky movie came out, I was 17, right? And you're 17, you're looking for something to inspire you and motivate you, and that movie had all those aspects of. And 30 years later, there was another Rocky movie. When I was at a real turning point, and he had a dialogue in a scene with his son that stuck with me. And he said, kid, you can't blame this and that. He goes, because life is hard, it's tough, it will beat you down, it'll beat you down, but it's not how hard you get hit, but it's how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. Right? We're all gonna get the shit kicked out of us in some way or another, but keep moving forward. How do you take the punches and keep moving forward? I took a lot of punches. I kept moving forward. I'm really happy where I am today, personally and professionally.
Can you think of a time when you did get hit and you were like ready to give up? Was there ever a time when there was a part of you that was like, man, maybe I ought to just toss in the towel? So how did you keep that? What was your thought? What was your energy? What was your state that kept you moving even though you were hit?
Didn't want to fail. I didn't want to disappoint. Look, I didn't start a family until I was later in life, so when I had my kids, I've always been very conservative and invested, and I never really, fortunately, knock wood, have had any financial issues. I've always been very smart with, I always made sure that I didn't, I lived under my means, which is something I would suggest to anyone, to make $1,
and less than you earn,
50 cents, maybe 60 cents. But what, I just didn't want to fail. I guess again, that was the personal ego. I didn't want to disappoint. I didn't want to disappoint family. I didn't want to disappoint friends, and I didn't want to disappoint, myself, So when things get bad, you get angry, and that's always a good thing. You get angry and you say, okay, but again, when you're younger, you can't see things in a practical way. You're much more emotional, but if you're older, you take a break and, okay, let's fix it. There's nothing that can't be repaired, pretty much, when it comes to careers, but and we're still learning, right? We're still learning.
Well, yeah, that's what's so interesting, and the complexity of being human is the wisdom you talk about is taking experience and learning from it and so forth. And yet, at the same time, as we get older, we don't want to lose that childlike creativity and curiosity, and then that juxtaposition of, well, like, because it just seems like in so many levels that it's like a maturity thing in all areas of life. Right. Yeah. And what stage are we at in maturity? Are we acting like, teenagers? Are we acting like, are we taking risks that are, not calculated? And, sometimes it serves us, sometimes it doesn't. And it's just such a complex thing, which is why I think one of the things you shared that is so important and brilliant is the team. That if you're in the right team and the ecosystem is there to support you, they could say, hey, Bill, you should probably put a parachute on before jumping out of that plane.
Look, I've always had great editors, by the way, and I had this great assistant for years and years and years and years. She's wonderful. Her name was Jessica Bumstead. So there were times when I would write a memo or do something, or send a note out to someone, whatever, and she was a really good editor, but more importantly, she'd come into the room. If I fired out something to somebody at Paramount or somebody at Warner Brothers or Universal regarding a license or whatever it may have been, or Capitol Records. And I suggest, can you just kind of double check the content on it? And she'll come back to me and she'll look at me. She'll go, Bill, you really want to say this? Yeah, Jess, I want to say, Bill, do you really want to take this approach? And then, well, so I've always relied on feedback. I don't have the freaking answers. None of us do. Anybody who believes they do, it's not true. But I've always had someone that made me better. She made my memos better. These guys that I'm working with right now really make me better. So yeah, I mean, I've always had somebody to collaborate with, make me better, and that's, you hope it continues, and that's all we can ask for.
Well, and what you've shared brilliantly is that these are the choices that we make.
Yeah.
We choose our environment. We, based on, look, there's some people, there's some things we can't change. And then we make a decision with what we have. Now, what environment am I going to put myself in? And I've lived that. Like, right. If I'm the smartest person in the room, need a new room. If I'm the, and here's what's interesting. And maybe, this is the last kind of thought with all this. I've always put myself into environments where I was the least talented. The challenge with that is when I'm hanging out with the A-listers, hanging out with, like Shane and Dee and like all these incredible people, my musical prowess, and Russ, I mean, making records with Russ. I mean, Russ is an incredible musician, like on all levels. Compared to Russ, I'm,
Russ DeSalvo, for those people.
Russ DeSalvo, oh yeah.
Come up. The guy's amazing.
He's amazing, and he's going to be on this as well. Compared to those artists and those musicians and those people, I'm nothing. But I'm so blessed that I can play in the game with them. Like, I know enough to play in the game. I can't play like Russ, but I can communicate with them. But it always had to balance, so I feel like insignificant in that.
No, but see, that's just it. They're
Right.
smart people, and they're drawing from you. Whether they say it or not, they're learning from you, in addition.
Of course, and I know that, and I share this to help people with the mindset on putting themselves in an environment that is intimidating.
That you said something really interesting, because I've always said I love batting sixth in the lineup. I love batting sixth in the lineup. I don't want to be the leadoff hitter. I don't want to bat cleanup. I love being sixth. That to me was a really good place to bat in the lineup. And another saying that I've always had and I've used, I don't know what your take on this is. And you see that, because getting back to the point when you were talking about songs, how did that make, how did that become a hit or something like that? There's an old saying, I don't know where I once heard it, but I use it often. I'd rather be lucky than good. Sometimes I know luck is preparation and opportunity coming together, but sometimes it's luck, Sometimes, I'd rather be lucky than good, but that's another component to the world we live in,
Well, and I think, though, that luck does show up when you're in the game.
Yeah, got to be in the game. Stay in the game, which was the 4 best words I've ever heard. And
to like kind of outside of music, a similar thing happened with my father. He was a executive vice president of a publicly traded bank, and they got purchased, and he was probably in his 50s, got purchased. What do you think the new board did as soon as they came in? Got rid of all the upper management. So here he is, top level guy, looking for a gig. And like you shared, there are companies who would rather have 4, cheap people than pay for the one big guy. So he was out of work, and he had to reinvent himself. And what he did was he went and he got a job doing title searching. And I'm like, Dad, why are you doing that? He goes, because I'm in the game. He goes, I could do this with my eyes closed. If I sit and play golf, I don't have to work, but if I sit and play golf for the rest of my days, I'd probably kill myself. Like, he didn't say that exactly, but he's like, if I'm doing that, swallow some pride. I'm in the game and I'm meeting people. And then within short order, an opportunity came his way. He bought a business, created a mortgage company, did some bunch of things and kind of brought it all back. But it never would have happened if he just sat on his laurels. And similar to what you've shared, and that's part of the reinvention process, is the willingness to take a couple steps back.
Oh, absolutely. Got to go backward to go forward. I mean, look, everyone will eventually be in that place. Everyone will eventually be there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my 21-year-old eventually will be there, down the road. We all are. And it's how you deal with the adversity and go forward. I mean, that's just what it is. You gotta plan ahead. And it's sometimes hard to plan ahead for situations. Things develop in a lot of different ways, for whatever
reason. Well, the planning ahead, I think, also what some people don't realize is the inner resourcefulness. Planning ahead is the also willingness to be creative and know that the only thing constant is change. So that we know things are going to happen. So the preparation is also flexing the mind, flexing the spirit, flexing the different parts that when an opportunity comes, we can recognize it and take action on it. Because had you not been through these incredible ups and downs that you've been through, this new opportunity with Y Networks, you may not have been able to capitalize because you might be stuck in an old paradigm.
Right. No, absolutely. No question about it. And again, that was as a result of maintaining the contacts, maintaining your network contacts. That's very important. The network is everything. Your network is everything.
Network is your net worth.
Yeah,
beautiful.
No question.
Well, awesome, brother. Thank you so much. I know we went a little bit long here, but gold.
Feels like we've only been at it for 10 minutes, but I enjoyed talking to you anytime, and you just let me know if you need anything answered.
I love reaching out to you and sending you any opportunities that come along my way. Is there any final words of advice or thoughts you'd like to leave with? And of course, we want to know how to get in touch with you and support whatever your projects are that, Y Networks. The
Y Networks will be coming up. And I think you can actually go on to the Y, all one word, the Y, letter Y, networks.com. There'll be an initial statement, and on that, it'll give you some idea of the other partners and founders of the company, and it shares a little bit of what we're about to launch. But we're excited about it, and again, it's all I can say to people is it's all about giving 100%, not quitting, and relying on your experiences and your network. And it's worked for not just me, for many, many, many people that I know, but hope to be able to share more of it with you guys in the future.
Awesome. Well, obviously, we're going to be supporting you. You just reminded me of it was a Jay-Z quote when you talked about the Hard Knock Life. I saw him. It was like one of these. He was interviewed. I don't remember who's being interviewed by, but they said, coming back, from the break, Jay-Z is going to share his secret to success. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to wait for this. Right. So I'm here. I'm waiting with bated breath. I'm like, okay, I love hearing people's success formulas. Right. And come back. Say, okay, Jay-Z, what made you so successful? He said, what we did was genius. And I'm like, okay, cool. What was genius? He goes, we never gave up. Yeah.
Like, you can't. You just can't. You can't. You can't give up.
It's the secret to success is the continued forward momentum. Just continue, even if you get pushed back. And that's where the humility comes in. You can maintain your mindset. Okay, I had a couple steps back, but it doesn't change my goal. And that's where the desire that you shared, Napoleon Hill talks about that. Have a, desire of where it is you want to go, have a vision, right? And then just keep moving.
Not easy at times, but you know what? At the end of the day, you're going to feel good about yourself for continuing to make the effort, because we're all, look, we're going to hit bumps in the roads, and
because the alternative is worse than the work it takes to keep moving forward.
No question.
And some people don't realize that, and then they drown themselves, and that's a whole other conversation in distractions and more. Well, awesome, brother. Thank you so much for your time, your vision, your genius, and look forward to more fun and anything that, of course, I can do. My resources are your resources. My network is Access. So anything you need, please let me know. And thank you again.
Be well. Thank you, Doug.
Brother. Thank you. God bless.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging with us. And remember to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts right here. And we look forward to serving you even more. Remember, download your free guided hypnotic meditation at guidedhypnotic.com. That's guidedhypnotic.com, where you'll get your free anxiety-busting meditation. We look forward to serving you, and if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out. All right, we love you for who you are and who you aren't. God bless.